I've been an archaeologist for about 8 years now, and I've explored some pretty remote places. Ancient temples in Southeast Asia, forgotten burial grounds in Eastern Europe, you name it. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened in that cave in the Peruvian highlands. It all started when I received a grant to investigate reports of an undocumented tribal site deep in the Andes. The locals refused to talk about it. When I'd ask for directions, they'd just shake their heads and walk away. One elderly woman grabbed my arm and whispered something in Quechua about the guardians who never sleep. I should have listened. I hired a guide named Carlos who agreed to take me to the cave entrance, but he made it clear he wouldn't go inside. He said his grandfather had warned him about that place his entire life. I thought it was just superstition. After all, I'd heard similar stories at dozens of sites before. The hike took us 2 days through increasingly dense forest. When we finally reached the cave, Carlos pointed to the entrance and immediately started back down the trail. I called after him, asking when he'd return. He shouted back that he'd wait at base camp for 3 days. If I wasn't back by then, he was leaving without me. The cave entrance was covered in handprints, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all in faded red pigment covering every inch of the rock face. Between the handprints were symbols I'd never seen before. Warnings, I later realized, written in an ancient dialect that predated even the Inca. I took photos of everything, excited by what seemed like an incredible discovery. Inside, my headlamp revealed a passage that opened into a larger chamber. The walls were lined with broken statues, humanoid figures with hollow eyes, and expressions of pure agony. There were bones too, arranged in deliberate patterns on stone shelves carved into the walls. And the masks. God, those ceremonial masks mounted on the walls seemed to follow my every movement. I was so focused on documenting everything that I didn't watch where I was stepping. My boot came down hard on what I thought was just another stone, but when I looked down, I realized it was a carved symbol, a circular design with radiating lines. The moment my weight pressed on it, I heard a sound like stone grinding against stone, deep within the cave. That first night, I set up camp just inside the main chamber. I was reviewing my photos when I heard it, chanting, low, rhythmic, coming from deeper in the cave. I grabbed my flashlight and searched every corner, every passage, nothing. The chanting stopped the moment I started looking. At midnight, it started again. This time, I just sat there listening, my heart pounding. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. Then came the wind, impossible gusts in a sealed cave system, followed by whispers. They were calling my name, not shouting it, just repeating it over and over in voices I almost recognized. On the second day, I tried to map the cave system to find the source of the sounds. That's when things got truly terrifying. I'd mark my path with chalk, following passages that seemed to lead deeper into the mountain. But after 20 minutes of walking, I'd find myself back in the main chamber. I tried again. Same result. The third time, I followed my own chalk marks and watched as they led me in an impossible loop. Passages that shouldn't connect. Turns that defied the cave's layout. By the third night, I hadn't slept in over 30 hours. The exhaustion was making me see things. Or at least, that's what I told myself when the shadows started moving. They would gather in the corners of my vision, taking familiar shapes. I saw my sister standing in the darkness, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. Then my ex-girlfriend, beckoning me to follow her into the deeper passages. My college professor, pointing at something just beyond my light's reach. I knew it wasn't real. I knew it. But the figures looked so solid, so perfectly detailed. The worst part was that they mimicked these people's mannerisms exactly. The way my sister tucked her hair behind her ear, the way my ex tilted her head when she was confused. Whatever was creating these illusions had looked inside my memories. On the fourth day, I decided I had to leave. I'd had enough. I packed packed everything and headed for the entrance, following my own footprints in the dust. But the entrance wasn't there. Instead, I found another chamber, one I'd never seen before. I turned back, followed my prints again. Another unfamiliar chamber. The cave was trapping me, changing itself, keeping me inside. I tried for hours, maybe days. I lost track of time completely. My phone was dead, my watch had stopped working. I was running low on food and water. The whispers never stopped, and the shadow figures grew bolder, approaching closer and closer until I could feel the cold radiating off them. Then, just when I thought I'd die in that place, I turned a corner and saw daylight. Not the entrance I'd come through, but another opening, smaller, nearly hidden behind fallen rocks. I ran for it, squeezing through gaps barely wide enough for my body, scraping my arms and legs raw. I didn't care. I could see trees, sky, freedom. I emerged on the opposite side of the mountain from where I'd entered. It took me 2 days to hike back to base camp, delirious and dehydrated. Carlos was still there, and the look on his face when he saw me told me I looked as bad as I felt. We didn't talk during the journey back to civilization. I've been home for 3 months now. I told the university I couldn't complete the project due to unsafe conditions. They bought it. What I haven't told anyone is what I see every night. Standing in the corner of my bedroom just beyond the reach of any light is a shadow. It doesn't move, doesn't make sound. It just watches. And every morning, I find one of those handprints on my bedroom window. Faded red pigment, exactly like the ones at the cave entrance. The spirit followed me home. It's patient, waiting for the right moment. I don't know what it wants, but I know it's not finished with me yet. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know what happened if I disappear. The shadow is getting closer every night. Last week, it was across the room. 3 nights ago, it was at the foot of my bed. Tonight, I swear I felt cold breath on the back of my neck. Whatever I woke up in that cave, it won't let me go. When I first arrived in that forgotten corner of Eastern Europe, I was chasing academic glory. The abandoned monastery had been on my radar for years, a crumbling relic from the 14th century that local universities refused to fund excavations for. The villagers wouldn't even discuss it. When I asked about the crypt beneath it, old women would cross themselves and walk away muttering prayers. I should have listened to them. The monastery sat on a hill surrounded by dead trees, their branches twisted like arthritic fingers clawing at the sky. The first time I approached it, not a single bird was singing. That should have been my second warning, but I was young, ambitious, and convinced that superstition was just ignorance dressed in folklore. I hired 2 local workers to help me clear the entrance to the crypt, but they both quit after the first day. One of them, an older man named Pavel, grabbed my arm before leaving and said something I'll never forget. The iron keeps them sleeping. You break the iron, you break the seal. I laughed it off and continued alone. The crypt entrance was beneath the monastery's chapel, accessible through a stone staircase that descended into absolute darkness. My flashlight beam revealed walls covered in strange symbols. Not religious iconography, but something older, more primal. The air down there was wrong. Not just cold or stale, but heavy, like it was pressing against my chest with invisible hands. There were 7 coffins arranged in a circle, and each one was sealed with dozens of iron nails driven through the lids in deliberate patterns. The symbols carved into the wood matched nothing in my reference books. They weren't meant to honor the dead, they were meant to trap them. Curiosity got the better of me. I started with the smallest coffin, carefully removing the nails one by one. The sound of each nail sliding out echoed through the chamber like a scream. When I finally lifted the lid, there was nothing inside but dust and the overwhelming smell of decay. But that night, back in the small cottage I'd rented in the village, I saw my first face. I was brushing my teeth when I caught movement in the mirror, A woman in medieval clothing standing behind me, her mouth open in a silent scream, her eyes black pits of rage. When I spun around, there was nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, she was gone. I convinced myself it was exhaustion. I went back the next day and opened 3 more coffins. Each one was empty except for fragments of bone and rotted cloth. But in the 5th coffin, I found it. A small reliquary box made of tarnished silver, covered in the same protective symbols. Inside was a fragment of bone wrapped in ancient parchment. I took it. God help me, I took it. That's when everything changed. Objects in my cottage started moving on their own. My notebook would be across the room when I'd left it on the table. My tools rearranged themselves. I'd hear footsteps in the empty hallway at night, always stopping just outside my door. The faces in mirrors multiplied. Men, women, children, all wearing medieval clothing, all with those same twisted expressions of eternal suffering. On the 4th night after taking the relic, I woke to find them standing around my bed. 7 figures, translucent but undeniably there, staring down at me with hatred that burned across centuries. The largest one, a man in nobleman's clothing, reached toward me, and when his hand touched my chest, it felt like ice water flooding my veins. I tried to return the relic the next morning. I ran to the crypt, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my flashlight. But when I tried to place the reliquary back in the coffin, an invisible force threw me against the wall. The spirits were everywhere now, manifesting in the shadows, their whispers filling the air with names and curses in a language I didn't understand. They followed me back to the cottage. I saw them in every reflective surface, windows, puddles, the screen of my phone. They were growing stronger, more solid. The nobleman's spirit attacked me that night, his ghostly hands around my throat, and I swear I could feel my life draining away. Only the sunrise seemed to weaken his grip. I tried to leave the village, but my car wouldn't start. The bus never came. It was like the spirits had trapped me there, the way they'd been trapped for centuries. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. Every shadow held a face. Every reflection showed the dead. They wanted me to join them, to become another guardian of whatever dark secret that crypt was meant to protect. The last thing I remember clearly was standing in the monastery chapel, surrounded by all 7 spirits, as the nobleman placed something around my neck, a chain made of shadows and whispers. Then everything went dark. According to the police report I was shown much later, they found me wandering the hills 3 days after that. I was muttering names in medieval dialects, names I'd never learned but somehow knew intimately. The strange part, the part that got me committed for psychiatric evaluation, was that I looked exactly the same as when I'd arrived in the village 6 weeks earlier. Not a day older. My hair hadn't grown. My beard was the same length. Even a cut on my hand from the first day looked fresh. The doctors said it was impossible. My colleagues said I'd had a breakdown, but I know the truth. The spirits didn't kill me. They claimed me. I'm their anchor now, their connection to the living world. Sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I see them standing behind me, waiting. And slowly, very slowly, I'm becoming like them. The monastery burned down last year under mysterious circumstances. The crypt was sealed with concrete, but I still hear the whispers, still see the faces. And every day I feel a little less alive, a little more like a ghost trapped in flesh. The iron kept them sleeping. I broke the seal, and now I'm paying the price for all eternity.